Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new Story Archive series going through For All Mankind Season 4. I'm your host, Mario Busto, alongside the one and only
host.
I was trying to say.
Oh, well, thank you for the intro. I appreciate that. It just throws me off.
You're welcome.
The one and only Zachary Newton. The one and only Zachary Newton on this podcast. Welcome back.
We're back, ladies and gents, and we are back with a deep, well, not kind of a deep, we're going to do a high-level recap of seasons 1 through 3 of For All Mankind. We're going to be taking you through what went down in season 1, 2, and 3, because if you're like me, I forgot a lot and how much happened in 3 seasons. Yeah. And apparently about 40 years worth of things happened in For All Mankind in the last 3 seasons. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. If you're new to the show, welcome. We welcome you to the Story Archives family. If you're old, well, not old, but if you're a Story Archivist or you're a Welcome Story Archives Club member, welcome back. We welcome you with open arms, lovingly, and we look forward to kicking off this For All Mankind series. And before we do, let's do a little bit of housekeeping, because we're not just kicking off our series into For All Mankind. If you noticed by our terrific new cover art for our Story Archives podcast, you'll notice that there is a menacing looking dinosaur reptilian creature on the left-hand side, and that's Godzilla, because we are also covering Monarch Legacy of Monsters starting on November 17th. So look forward to our double series recaps, well, not recaps, our deep dives into both For All Mankind Season 4 and Monarch Legacy of Monsters Season 1, which should be a killer show. I'm sure there will be killing. Zach, what do you think? You looking forward to November, December?
I'm very much looking forward to November, December. I was really hoping we would find a couple solid shows to round out the year. I think we got them.
I think we got
the 2 shows. So I'm very excited. For All Mankind has been great. It's been a long time since I've watched anything Godzilla, so it'll be interesting just kind of coming in fairly fresh on that show. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious to see what Apple does.
I'm looking forward to getting back into Apple TV coverage and making it through a full season without getting banned by Apple to get through For All Mankind. Because if you weren't with us, if you're new to the show, we had a situation where we were banned from YouTube for about a month. And Apple was behind it. So, hey, we're back marketing their shows for free. Apple, if you're out there listening to this content, we love your shows. Show us some love too. How about that? Let's get into it, shall we?
Good way. I think we could probably call this a shallow dive, not a deep dive. It's a shallow dive, right, into it.
A recap, or would we go? What's like a low diving recap?
It's a shallow dive. I don't know. It felt appropriate. I too forgot literally how much happened. Like, I remembered a lot of like the broad strokes and kind of where we left off for the most part, but man, a lot did happen throughout each season. Like you said, there was a lot of years.
Yeah.
I named the 3 seasons because they didn't have a name, and I felt they all deserved a name.
Okay.
For me, season 1 is the Moon Race.
Okay.
Season 2 is the Moon Base.
Oh, nice. It rhymes.
Season 3 is the Mars Race and Base. Because I think we covered, there was a lot that got covered in season 3, man. I was just going like ham as I was, just taking note of everything that I remembered, and, doing a little bit of digging. That's my names.
I think the thing about For All Mankind that really stands out and why people kind of get hooked on the show is that it's a retelling of what history would have been like. The premise pretty much of the show is, how would history have changed if the Russians landed first on the moon? And then how everything transpires after that. Now, being from America myself, Zach, I believe you're from America as well, unless you're a double agent like Margot. I'm rooting for NASA here. And so sometimes in this show, you have this, there's kind of like, I feel like the trend in For All Mankind is that competition brings the world together. As a capitalist, I tend to agree with, competition is good. However, I'm not buying the whole North Koreans getting to Mars first bit. I don't know if the Russians getting on the moon first makes North Korea get to Mars first. It's a bit of a stretch. But it is interesting because it kind of, if you think about it, the way the show goes, it's essentially saying, if Russia got to the moon first, the world would be advanced further by like 10 or 20 years. Because essentially, Dev Ayesa, the guy who's in charge of Helios, he's the private company who's competing with NASA and the Soviets to get to Mars first, right? Yeah. That guy is essentially the Black Elon Musk. So he's pretty much that version of Musk. He's SpaceX, right? And he's battling the public companies, which are still successful, right? I mean, in real life, we know what's happened, right? SpaceX kind of has taken the lead here. And I mean, I'm not an astronaut expert, but NASA, it was not prioritized. Like space exploration has not been prioritized in the way it was in the 1960s. Now it's just relatively recently getting that way. But it seems like that what the show is trying to say is if the Soviets got to the moon first, we would have been all about space exploration because nuclear energy is a thing in the 1990s, according to For All Mankind, season 3.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know where we'd be if Russia made it to the moon first. I don't know. Maybe the extra competition would make us push boundaries a bit more. But I don't know. I also kind of feel like it would be difficult to tell so much of the story, like if it were in the future from today, like literally like maybe like 2030. We were recording this in 2023.
Yeah,
because you're so tied into those characters. Like you're really, you're along the journey with Ed Baldwin and with Karen and Gordo and all of those people as you go throughout seasons 1 and 2. Like you can't jump that far into the future.
I wonder now where we're going to be, because where we leave off in season 3, and we'll be bouncing around in this episode talking about some things that happened in season 1, some of the character dynamics, where we expect them to go in season 3. But season 4 is going to kick off with Margot seemingly defected to Russia. And if nuclear energy is the thing and pumping and doing well in the 1990s, right? People are protesting against nuclear energy because they want oil back, it seems like, in season 3. But I think that's what they're getting at. But I'm assuming in 03 we're going to have like full-blown AI models. This show's probably going to end with the whole snippet of 2001 Space Odyssey. It's gonna have HAL 9000 just on a spaceship with Ed asking to be let back in to the pod bay.
Man, season 4 is going to be an interesting one. I don't know what to expect, right? Like if I look at the patterns, I mean, just my own season names, the race and then the base, right? Like we covered both of them for Mars in this one season. So I don't know. Like, are we going to make it back to Earth? Like, is that going to be a thing, or are we going to see two really like divergent storylines here?
What if season 4 just like ends Earth, like, and now we have to go live on Mars? It just becomes just what's that movie, that animated movie, Atlas, Titan AE, where the Earth pretty much it's over. There's like a meltdown, maybe a nuclear war. I don't remember what happens in the movie. And then the guy's hunting for a ship that has like DNA of every single species on Earth, and he recreates like the planet. It's whatever. I digress. It's a rabbit hole. But it does make you wonder where we're going to be in 03, right? You got the North Koreans on Mars. You got the Americans. You got Ed, who I believe now knows that Danny Stevens, did the dirty with his wife.
He knows. Yeah, that was a big point in season 3. I was happy to finally get to that was out in the air. I was kind of tired of just like looking at Danny contemplating things and like trying to want to tell Ed about this and then not. It was kind of annoying.
I'm gonna have to say, for all the listeners out there, that the Stevens storylines, let's just call them the Stevens storylines, right? Because you got Gordo and Tracy who die heroically, right? They save the Jamestown base, the first ever moon base, right?
Mm-hmm.
Heroic ending to them, although they were my 2 favorite characters in the show alongside Ed.
Yeah, it was one of the most heartbreaking moments.
Yeah, it's pretty much like my ranking of favorite characters is probably Ed, Gordo, Tracy, and Molly Cobb are probably my top 4. Maybe Danny rounds out the top 5 if I had to guess, because Margot's always kind of been a little bit of a cold
stick up her butt.
Yeah. I mean, she really loses her control of NASA, and it's actually ironic with Margot, because think about all the crap she gave her mentor, right? Who was a former Nazi or unwilling Nazi, correct?
Yeah.
We get that, which they kind of didn't touch on in the season 1 and 2 recap, that whole storyline with the former director of NASA. She ends up kind of being, like the kettle, what is it? The kettle calling the
pot calling the kettle black. Yeah. Something like that.
She kind of ends up being that because she becomes sort of this double spy for the Soviets because she's in love with Sergei.
Yeah, she is. Something she really can't shake even after all the many, many years. I don't think she's ever had a love life or anything.
No,
it's just these two people who love their craft, like they kind of
I'm pretty sure they had
together well.
I'm pretty sure they had like at least at the very least an emotional affair. I'm assuming I'm assuming they were physical and sleeping together. I would assume, but she's a woman who's obsessed with her job and obsessed with rising that ladder. And things, unfortunately for her, she found herself in love with a guy who is forbidden, right? Both politically, professionally, and he also has a family of his own, right?
Yeah, he's married with a kid, right?
Yeah, he's having I believe it's an affair with him. And by the way, guys, we're with you in some of this stuff. I mean, we're doing the recaps, but some of the things are fuzzy a little bit. So bear with us as we get into season 4. We'll become the more expert. If you want like the deep dive recaps, you just go YouTube them. You'll get no opinions. You'll just get robotic voice recaps of seasons 1
literally,
if that's what you're into. I want to talk about it because season 3 ends with the once again the Steven storylines. We'll call that, if you got your names for the seasons, the Steven storylines ruined season 3 for me, and borderline season 2, because that storyline with Karen sleeping with Gordo's son is one of the most atrocious things I've ever seen in television. Maybe it's not even atrocious. Maybe it's because we love Ed so much, right? And we put ourselves in his just imagine that scenario for a man. I mean, even Joel Kinnaman, who plays Ed in the show, in the recap, as he's hearing that storyline and talking about it, he is like almost growling, saying, "Gordo's son, my best friend's son, really?" Like even I'm assuming if you're an actor, because you got no control over the script, unless you got a writer or director who's like willing to kind of mold a little, do a little differences here and there, if you're really into the character. I'm assuming some of these actors read these plots and they're like, why are we going down this route? Is it not bad enough that Shane dies while he's in Jamestown? Because Ed gets pushed to the brink in terms of being the most decorated astronaut for the most part in NASA, right? Danny does the heroic move, fakes, breaking her arm. Well, she actually does break her own arm to save Gordo, who's losing his mind on Jamestown, because the Apollo 23 blew up on the launch pad. So now, and that's really the crazy thing about the show, is it's ruthless in terms of who dies. Like, this is not Invasion, which we just covered on Apple TV.
Thank you. Come on, learn notes from each other.
for all man, and if you want to catch our Invasion coverage, we've done seasons 1 and 2 of Invasion. If you're into alien invasion shows, back to For All Mankind. This show, anybody will die. Like, they'll just be walking down the street, and then dumbass Jimmy Stevens will come in with his cult friends, and they'll just blow up something. It's just. Anything goes in For All Mankind, and people die. Like even Alexei, who's Kelly Baldwin's lover. I don't think they got married on the ship, but he knocked her up. He dies after you think he's good, after the landslide that Danny Stevens caused, by the way, by the drilling of just pretty much eating garbage, because he started abusing again, and just not in the right mental state to be in space in the first place, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
I will say I think he would have lost it far sooner if this was a truer, like if this was real life, he probably would have lost it far before getting to Mars, if I had to guess. But nonetheless, Alexei dies of brain trauma, of like post-traumatic brain trauma, that he's just on the ship for a bit and then he just collapses and dies, which was horrible.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. But that, as sad as it is one of the things that I like about the show, right? Like, it really makes me invested into the characters, and I'm sad when Gordo dies. Like that was like Man, that one hurt. Like watching that in season 2, that one hurt.
One of the other themes of the show is the empowering of women. You got Molly Cobb, right? Because the Soviets put the pressure. They got not only the first astronaut on the moon, they get the first woman on the moon, which makes the USA like, damn it, we didn't get even the man on the moon. Now we got to get a woman up there. If we didn't get a woman, we got to get a base up there. Get it done. At least that's my Nixon voice. And so you get the birth of Molly Cobb, right? Who's a badass, right? She's more badass than most of the men on the show. And then you get others who are kind of like, more feminine, but also kind of celebrity-esque astronauts, right? You get the pretty Ellen, you get Tracy, who's hot. And you get these different astronauts and their characters, and they all bring something different to the show, right? You got Danny, who's kind of like the maverick. Like, she's kind of like the more by the book type of astronaut, right? Yeah. She's a traditional she has a husband, a kid. I mean, she has it all pretty much. She got the nuclear family going. Molly Cobb's kind of like the cowboy, loose cannon, smokes weed in a bathtub to kind of recover from the solar storm. You got Ellen, who's probably the most complex in the sense of what she's going through. She is a closeted lesbian who is trying to hide that in a world that's not accepting it at this time. Even though she has that conundrum with Will Tyler, who she discharges from the military in season 3. And I'm assuming that's going to just continue to be a storyline because Ellen comes out at the end of season 3. So I'm assuming there's going to be political repercussions. But based on the way the show goes, because the Soviets landed on the moon first, I guess that means more freedom for everybody. So I guess things will just be fine for Ellen. But she becomes president. That's kind of like the biggest curveball, right? Because she's like the attractive, pretty one. She comes from a lot of money. That's another thing. She comes from wealth, and she's choosing to forge her own path by being an astronaut and risking her life. And season 3 has her wrapping up her time in Jamestown, where she comes back to Earth and has her successful political career, which kind of turns into have you ever seen House of Cards on Netflix?
I haven't. It's always been on my list, but I never watched it.
I never finished it. I think I got through the first 2 seasons, but she has to deal with the dirtiness of politics and people blackmailing her. And there is that kind of common thread of blackmail in season 3 as well, because Margot is getting blackmailed by the Soviets for having leaked Aleida Rosales, which was Margot. She's kind of what Margot was to...
she's her apprentice.
Yeah, she was the apprentice to the former Nazi guy. What's his name? Can you look up that character? He's like only in the first few episodes.
Yeah.
That's like the only character I can't remember his name. Meanwhile, I'll continue. Aleida Rosales, who Margot denied moving in with her in season 2, essentially gets hired by NASA and starts to realize that the Soviets are stealing key elements of the spaceship that she designed. And things eventually, after multiple attempts of trying to get Margot to realize what the Soviet, like that there's got to be a mole, right? She comes to the conclusion that it's Margot, but she doesn't turn on Margot, despite something bad had to have happened for whatever time skip we're doing in season 4 for Margot to be in Russia, right?
Yeah. I believe his name was Werner von Braun.
Yes, Werner von Braun. Yeah, famous figure too. I'm surprised I didn't remember that. Yeah, Zach, thoughts on everything I just mentioned?
No, I mean, it is a lot. There is a lot of blackmail going on. I do think that, Margot has defected to Russia. I think that was pretty obvious by the end of the 3rd season. I don't like the thing that I'm struggling with is trying to understand where we're left with, right? Like, what's left of NASA? I mean, it was literally blown up. Let's not forget that. Karen dies. Ed has such a tragic storyline, honestly. His kid dies, his wife sleeps with his best friend's son, and his wife dies.
I think the writers
as a result of his best friend's son being foolish.
No, how about this? How about this?
Horrible.
His best friend's son sleeps with his wife. His best friend's other son blows up NASA, which kills his wife.
And pick some new friends.
Talk about a legacy.
Go find yourself a Ben. Talk like a Lupin.
Yeah.
Not a Gordo.
talk about a legacy for the Stevens here, right? After, mom and dad have this heroic legacy. Now, I don't know what's left for Danny Stevens, but I don't expect much positive from Danny Stevens. I'll be honest.
Well, I don't know, man.
I'm hoping jail for Danny Stevens.
The Danny Stevens thing is going to be very interesting. I mean, he's basically been like exiled to live with the Korean guy on on his own little tiny ship.
Yeah, I hope may he stay there and return to North Korea, which apparently is the pinnacle of space exploration now.
I feel like the way that the Koreans got there, like it was very like torturous, right? Like
they sent a tin can into space.
Yeah, like that's what it seemed like, man. It seemed like it was just like, we're just gonna select random people. Like he didn't seem like he had any business being there. I'm
just surprised to be here.
I'm just saying.
I'm as surprised as you are that we made it.
Well, his partner died during the landing. I don't know, man. I feel like they just like selected a few people, threw him in a rocket, and just like, all right, let's try and get it close to Mars, and luckily got it there.
Yeah, I want to go back to this whole explosion of NASA thing because Jimmy makes friends with these anarchists who want to blow up NASA for whatever reason. And I'm not lamenting Karen's death. I was about fed up with Karen's storyline. I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not going to. I lament Molly Cobb's death because she also died in the explosion, if you don't remember that.
Yeah.
But not Karen. Because first and foremost, the whole Danny Stevens thing, unforgivable. 2, I can't buy her being CEO of a space exploration company. I just can't buy it. I can buy Ellen as president. I can't buy Karen as a CEO of a space exploration company. Zach, can you?
Not after seeing her in season 1. She seemed pretty fragile in season 1, from what I recall. So I found it a bit surprising at how strong of a character she had developed into. But I mean, I guess that's what 30 years will do to you, or however much time lapsed in this show so far.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with you in that I wasn't lamenting over her death. I think I felt more bad for Ed than I felt bad about the fact that Karen died.
I felt bad for her in the sense that if you think about her character's arc, you would have hoped for a proper healing from the death of her son, which was truly tragic, right? Because it happens after there's a disagreement and the son goes and rides his bike to his game. But it's one of those things where Ed has a meltdown in space, right? And it takes him a bit of time, but you get that brilliant mission that Margot engineers that saves Ellen, who's spiraling out of control, right? So remember, they launch Ed into space and he saves Ellen, who's like flying by.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed kind of snaps out of his funk, but Karen, she buys the watering hole called the Outpost that all the astronauts go to drink at. And her healing came through sleeping with her dead son's friend that he grew up with. And it was one of those things where like you're watching that and you like Karen's character. You like Ed's character. You feel horrible. And maybe that's the reason it is, because it's very memorable. It's a very memorable storyline that occurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't even really blame Danny Stevens because Karen's very attractive. But nonetheless, it's one of those
morals.
You get what I'm saying, though, in terms of like, you're hoping Karen is the one in that situation who's, declining that. But, it happened. And it really did take the season for a whirl, and it sent Danny Stevens' character into a different trajectory. I think that if that affair never happens, he becomes a different person. And I think it also sends the younger brother, Jimmy, who's kind of aimless and has no purpose and, gets duped by these people because he finally has some friends, into doing something horrific, which is probably, I'm assuming, going to land him in jail. Because ignorance does not give you, does not absolve you from being a part of it, right?
I completely agree. I imagine his storyline is going to kind of just dissipate. Like, I don't know that we're going to get much of it at all, really, in season 4. But I could be surprised. You did remind me, though, that Ed really has made a habit of being launched into space to save people.
Yeah.
He's launched into space in season 1 to save. It was Ellen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in season 3, and keep in mind, that was after he had found out that his son died, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then right after another traumatic scenario where he realizes that Danny Stevens had slept with his wife, he has to snap out of that to launch his now pregnant daughter into space to get her up to the space station so she can have her child. So
if anyone should be president of the United States, it should be Ed. That's who it should be. Ed Baldwin.
That would be a funny change. He's just president from Mars. He's just sitting there in like a new little office, his own office there.
Yeah, Joel Kinnon's perfect for that role. I do wonder where that leaves his character for season 4. It is a pretty horrible state to come back to in terms of, I mean, him and Kelly both are going to have something in common, right? Because you figure Ed was still into Karen in her own way, despite the betrayal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Kelly also lost her lover, which should have been, her husband, after she's now pregnant and given birth. But it's almost kind of like a peace accord between the Soviets and America. That's kind of what Kelly represents, right?
Yeah, I agree. And, hopefully it stays that way. I mean, tensions are high between the Russians and the Americans in every single season of For All Mankind. So hopefully it stays that way, but I kind of don't think it's going to. Like I especially if Margot's defected to Russia at this point. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of drama. There's going to be a lot of political stuff going on between Russia and the U.S. still. So not quite sure how long this truce is going to last. Even though we did save them from their own ship that they melted down in the middle of space.
I relate to something you said earlier in the episode of I'm not sure, because at this point, all right, it's 2003, right? So we had Kennedy, we had Nixon, we had Reagan, we had Clinton, right? Did they do a deviation and elect somebody else as president and skip over somebody?
I didn't pay that close of attention, but obviously they did at some point.
I think I am blanking on something, but they changed an election in the show. Let me look this up. Banter, Zach.
They may have. I feel like Kennedy was elected, or at least was running in this or something, but maybe not. I love when you ask me to banter on these things. It's always
do it, man. It's
always rather fun.
It's an opportunity for improvement. Okay, all right. This is what it was.
Okay, see, that's why I don't do it, because the moment I start to go, I'm like, okay, there's something I can talk about that's just random.
You take too long to get to the point.
All right, what's up?
Reagan became president 4 years earlier in For All Mankind. He wins in a landslide in 1976 instead of 1980, where he also had a landslide. So yeah, so I'm assuming then you'll get Bush, and you'll get who knows? Maybe in this reality, 9/11 is averted. I don't know, because we're in 2003 now with Margot. And by the way, guys, we watched the recaps for seasons 1 through 3. I have not watched the trailer for season 4. I haven't watched anything for season 4, and I want to keep it that way as long as I can. We may be doing a trailer reaction, but I don't know. I kind of want to go blind into the season, because this show specifically is so out of left field that I kind of want to just not expect anything and just go.
Well, F it. Let's make that decision right now. Let's both go in blind, because I haven't watched the trailer either, and I think this is a sufficient dive into what has happened to at least, spark or reignite my interest in what's going to happen in season 4.
I was like blank slate coming into this. And, we were very much in Invasion and Lupin mode, which, by the way, if you want to watch our coverage of Lupin season or part 3, you can catch that. We got all episodes available on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts. Back to the show. yeah, I kind of went in with a blank slate when it came to For All Mankind, and now I'm all in. I'm going blind into Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. I mean, maybe we'll do one episode there, just simply for the SEO and to kind of like ramp up the fact that we exist as a Monarch: Legacy of Monsters podcast. Which, by the way, horrible name for the show. I know it's based on earlier material, but nonetheless, it is a clunker to say. Why not just like Monarch? Something
or Legacy. Legacy of Monsters is good on its own. Monarch is good on its own.
Legacy of Monsters does sound kind of like a sci-fi show. It's like Legacy of Monsters on History Channel, and it's just and it goes through like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster. It goes through like a bunch of, you know what I mean? Just a bunch of mythical.
No, I know what you mean, but hey, at least you're trimming off one nice large word from that title.
True. All right, let's talk about some of the characters, where they are, where they're going, our predictions, possibly, for the season. I think this would be the time to do the predictions for the season.
For the season, just no expectation. I have no expectation.
So let's just do some wild, crazy expectations for the season. Okay, we're in 03. We're in 03, so I'm assuming Ellen is no longer president.
How large of a time jump is that?
I think it's like a 10-year time jump again. Because we were in 94.
Yeah.
Right? And now we would be in 03 if what I watched is correct, which I believe it is.
Okay.
Ed's old as hell. I don't think Ed's going back to space.
No.
As far as we know, Ed might be dead. We don't know. I hope not. But I haven't watched the trailer, so we're going in blind. Watch, there's going to be a reviewer out there saying, these guys didn't prep for the show. They don't even know who's in the season 4.
That's the whole point.
Anyway, what's the point? What's the point of, doing this if you're not going to know? We don't know if Ed's back or whatever, but I'm assuming, like, my prediction is there will be a new generation in NASA. Later Rosales will be on the hot path towards being pretty much the new Margot, right? Hopefully a little bit more empathetic and not such a uptight control freak as Margot was. And there's just so much to do. I think Kelly becomes like the darling of society with her Soviet baby. And there becomes kind of like this theme, right? There would probably be a closeness between her and her father. We talked about the shared experience. I mean, he lost an ex-wife and she lost her mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
She lost her mother and Alexei. So I'm assuming that baby will be older now. That baby will be about 10 years old. Are we going to get to season 5 where they do another time skip and that baby goes to space? Is it that far-fetched?
I think that season 4 will be the last season of For All Mankind.
You think so? Have they announced that? I think this will be a 5-season show, to be honest.
I don't know. I if I remember correctly, C was a 4-season show from Apple, and I feel like there was another. I don't know why. I feel like there was another show that I had watched recently from them that had 4 seasons as well.
The Servant.
Yeah, I think that one was a 4-season one as well, and so I don't know. Like maybe it's a pattern of theirs. It could be just too early to tell. Like maybe it was just 2 shows that happen to only have 4 seasons, but. Yeah. To me, like I feel like this is one where you gotta end it at some point, right? Like this show is about Ed. It's about his family. It's about this whole journey and his life over a great period of time. And if he's about to be nearing his deathbed at some point soon, as he's probably 70 plus years old.
Yeah.
I imagine this would have to be like the last season. That's my opinion. That's my prediction is that this will be the season finale, the show finale, I should say.
Yeah.
I'm just go big or go home, man.
I agree with you there. I mean, there's a lot of appeal that goes with Ed, right? As Ed goes, the show goes in a way. Yeah. I am expecting a crazy montage, like similar to other seasons where we get a crazy montage at the beginning of how the years have passed from the 90s into the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And Lord knows how far into the 2000s we go. But I'm expecting that space tourism is at a completely different place. Rest in peace, the Helios Hotel. But Oh no, what was it called? Polaris? It was not called Helios. Helios was
Helios was the company. I believe Polaris was the hotel. Yes.
Yes. The one that Karen's husband Sam dies on Danny Stevens, man. His honeymoon.
Yeah.
The hotel pretty much goes to hell and blows up. But I'm assuming space tourism has bounced back. There's more progress on the moon like never before. Like maybe there's a city on the moon by now when we get into this season that Ed's probably living on, because what's left for him on Earth, right?
Seriously.
And you'll have some progress on Mars. I just think technologically it's going to be crazy, and I'm maybe most excited to see how much fun the writers had with creating and projecting this new world, this new era that doesn't exist, but that maybe they think could have existed in 03. But maybe right now they are where we are. Maybe like 03 is 2023. And so it's not going to look anything different from what it is now, even though they're technically already more advanced than us in 1994.
I mean, dude, they've made it to Mars at this point already. So
Yeah.
they're doing something right.
Yeah. So how about you?
As far as what else I think is going to happen in season 4, I mean, again, I think it's going to be the show finale. I was debating, like, is Ed and Kelly going to live their life on Mars, or are they going to make it home to Earth? I'm torn. I'm torn on that one, man. I think maybe maybe Kelly makes her way home.
Well, you know what's crazy? That's the first baby born in space. That's the most famous baby on the planet.
Yeah.
Right? And not just
Peace
that.
Baby born in space.
She might be the first person to have had sex in space.
It's possible. But with Gordo, who knows?
True. That's crazy. I mean, we didn't talk about that. This baby's going to be famous. This baby's going to be like Harry Potter. Like, this is going to be...
That baby comes back to Earth, they're going to be studying the shit out of that thing.
Famous as hell. That baby's an alien. He's not even an Earthling. That's that baby's a Martian. He's the first
Martian. That's actually true. Yeah, he's a Martian. How about that?
Wow.
I'm gonna make the assumption that Ed and Kelly live out their life on Mars.
On Mars?
I feel like I'm gonna be wrong on that one. But I'm gonna stick to it. I've got a few of these wagers under my belt at this point. So,
are we doing wagers now, or I think we should do the wagers after episode 1 and just do some crazy ones.
I think we can add more wagers to it, but I do want to make some decent bets / predictions, whatever. Like,
yeah,
I don't mind throwing some of these into a bet or into a wager if we want to, but that's what I think is going to happen.
I think Ed definitely spends the rest of his days in space, so I can't disagree with you there. I think he dies in space. We see him die in the series in space. I think Kelly's baby is we're going to have a famous baby storyline, and so this is going to be like the most famous astronaut ever, this kid, right? And he's going to be beloved by the Soviets. Both the Soviets and the Americans are going to claim this kid, right? So you're going to have that storyline, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the kid's going to be like LeBron James Jr., like fighting. Is he going to go in his father's footsteps, right? Or is he going to go in a different path altogether? Mom, I don't want to be an astronaut. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with this kid.
Now that I think about it, I'm gonna kind of modify my prediction a little bit. I do still think Ed's going to stay in space.
I'm just kidding.
Ed's going to stay in space, right? Like, I agree with that. I still think that'll be the case. Okay. I do think Kelly's going to end up going back home to Earth with the baby, because
for a little bit
that baby's going to be like floating around in space naked or something. I mean, they don't have any baby clothes, don't have any diapers. Like, that's going to be a hell of a mess. At least they have a whole hotel, like they can rotate the craps that it takes in different rooms every other day or something. But no, No, I think it's going to be a mess. That kid will never be able to go outside or anything like that. It's not going to be able to go down to Mars or anything. So I don't know. I imagine that she's going to have to kind of take the kid back to Earth.
Yeah, I think there will also be some sort of storylines with the complexity of introducing this kid to his other side of his family, right? Because he has a Russian side. So I'm assuming there will be some sort of introduction to, hey, you're not just American, you got Russian in you too, kid. Yeah, it should be interesting. I could see that character, and we don't know his name yet, I don't believe. I could see him being a major character in the show as it winds down. And I will stick to my prediction. I don't think, let's make this a wager. I don't think season 4 is the last season of For All Mankind. I think there will be at least one more after it.
Okay.
So if you want to take the under on that, you can do that.
All right, I'm noting it down right now.
All right, cool. I think that just about does it. Do you want to discuss anything else before we get into this?
No, dude. I think that about covers it. It's pretty thorough. I mean, of course, there are small things that happen here and there throughout the show. There's just a ridiculous amount of things that go on. Very interesting show. I really liked it. I will make a comment though that you have always been against the Danny Karen, part of the
yes, I always have.
Part of the show. I don't blame you about it. It was a very annoying thing, but even with that, this is probably one of the more memorable shows from Apple, at least for me.
There is this narrative, if you want to take this narrative outside of Apple, right? Apple's a relatively young streaming platform. They've yet to prove that they can land the ship on a show like that starts great and ends great, right? Other networks have done it with other shows. Breaking Bad and Mad Men stand out to me as the best starting and ending of a show that I've ever watched. But Apple has to prove that. And I would say that season 3 deviation with the Steven storyline, they got a lot of making up to do with that one. For me, as a fan, just saying, but not, it's life. Life's not perfect. It could have happened. I'm just saying I hated it. That's pretty much it. I also hate that the kid, like Jimmy's like this incel Unabomber. Like, no, he's not even like a... You can't even respect him because he's so oblivious to the fact that he's complicit in this.
Yes.
It makes it even almost worse.
It's true. I don't think I ever really felt bad for Jimmy.
Jimmy,
I was very annoyed with him for a lot of season 3, primarily for blowing up NASA. But yeah, no, I don't know what's going to happen with him. He'll probably just end up going to prison.
He'll be in jail.
That'll be
in jail for life.
To Steven's line. Yeah.
He'll be in jail for life. We'll probably get a scene in this season of Danny visiting his brother, who he didn't want to visit for years, and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, whatever.
All right, let's do a little housekeeping before we head out. Thank you all for tuning in to our For All Mankind, or the beginning of our For All Mankind coverage on the Story Archives podcast. If you're new here, you can listen to us on all platforms. We're also on YouTube. We have video podcasts as well, and we are launching live stream. So we actually might be doing our first episode of For All Mankind Season 4, Episode 1 as a live stream. Stay tuned for that. And if you want to watch any other of our show coverage, we have done series on Peaky Blinders, an extensive coverage on the entire series of Peaky Blinders. We did Last of Us Season 1. We got the White Lotus Season 2 finale. We just ran through Invasions Seasons 1 through 2, Foundation Season 1 and 2, and our biggest series to date, Silo Season 1 on Apple TV. So we got a lot for you. We welcome you to the Story Archives family. And for those of you who are always welcome here and who have been here since the beginning, we welcome you, our old friends. And we look forward to entertaining you in the weeks and months to come with For All Mankind and Monarch, Legacy of Monsters.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. If you do want to watch the potential live stream that we may be doing, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and Twitter or X, because I think those are the primary places that we're looking to stream it. It's not going to be streamed to Spotify or anything like that, but it will be available on Spotify and Apple and everywhere else that you find podcasts after the fact. So just want to throw that out there and make sure that you're on a platform where you can watch it. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode of For All Mankind by Story Archives. You can find this podcast anywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For now, Google might be going away. But you can visit our YouTube channel at Soapbox Podcast Network, our website at soapbox.house. You can email us at contact@soapbox.house. We do have a link in the description below. And finally, if you want to support the show, you can go subscribe over on our Patreon. We do have a free membership on there for you as well, just so we can stay in touch. You can send us messages. It's a nice community tool.
And review the show. 5 stars appreciated.
Especially.
If you mean it. All right. Thank you all for listening. We will see you on Thursday night or Friday night, depending on the show's release. Take care.